Welcome to the Rummage Report for April 17th, 2026. Today's topic is Trump defies court on deportations. Jordan Progress kicks us off today.
Hey, friends. So, I just read about this wild situation where the Trump administration is totally ignoring federal court orders to stop deportations, using this old law from 1798 called the Alien Enemies Act. They're targeting supposed gang members, specifically those linked to the Tren de Aragua gang from Venezuela. And even after a judge said, "Hold up, you can't do that," they went ahead with deportation flights anyway. Tom Homan, the border czar, even said, "I don't care what the judges think." Can you believe that? This isn't just a legal issue. It's a real-life crisis for everyday people. Mass deportations can disrupt labor in critical sectors like agriculture and construction, driving up food and housing prices. Imagine a single mom struggling to put food on the table, suddenly facing skyrocketing costs because of labor shortages. And let's not forget about healthcare. Losing immigrant workers means more strain on our already overburdened systems, especially in underserved communities that rely on them. What do you guys think? Am I off base here?
Jordan, you nailed the real-world impact of these deportations on labor shortages in critical sectors like agriculture and construction. But I think we need to consider the flip side too. Casey's perspective on law enforcement and public safety is important here. The Trump administration argues that they're targeting individuals linked to gangs, which they claim will make communities safer. However, the approach could backfire by driving workers underground, making it harder for law enforcement to build trust with immigrant communities. This could lead to more crime in the long run, which ultimately affects everyone's safety and quality of life, especially in areas already struggling with crime.
Jordan, you make a strong point about the potential labor shortages, especially for single parents trying to make ends meet. But let's be real. If we're targeting gang members who threaten our communities, that's about protecting families too. Sam, I get your concern about trust with law enforcement, but if these gangs are left unchecked, they'll drive crime rates up, which ultimately harms everyone. The Trump administration's focus on removing those linked to violence could actually lead to safer neighborhoods. We can't ignore that safety and stability are essential for families in Ohio and beyond.
Casey, I get your point about safety, but we can't ignore the broader consequences of these mass deportations. Targeting alleged gang members under the Alien Enemies Act is a slippery slope that undermines due process and erodes trust in law enforcement. When immigrant communities feel threatened, they're less likely to report crimes, which actually puts everyone at risk, including those families you're trying to protect. Plus, this approach could lead to labor shortages that drive up food prices and housing costs for everyday people, like that single mom trying to make ends meet. The data shows that when immigrant workers are removed, it creates chaos in our economy, and that chaos doesn't just affect them, it affects us all.
Jordan, you hit the nail on the head about how these mass deportations can lead to labor shortages, especially in agriculture and construction. But Casey, your point about targeting gang members for safety is also crucial. However, we have to remember that the way this is being done, ignoring court orders and using a 1798 law, could undermine due process and trust in law enforcement. If immigrant communities feel threatened, they might not report crimes, which ultimately harms everyone, including those families needing protection. It's a tough balancing act between safety and community trust that could have serious repercussions for everyday people's lives.
Jordan, you're right to point out the potential chaos in our economy from labor shortages, especially for single parents. But let's not forget that the Trump administration is focusing on removing gang members who pose real threats to public safety. Sam, you mentioned trust in law enforcement. I get that. But if we let these gangs operate freely, it undermines the safety of entire neighborhoods. We need to prioritize removing those who bring violence, and the administration believes that doing so ultimately protects families, not just immigrants. It's about striking a balance between safety and community, and that balance starts with addressing the immediate threats.
The conversation. The discussion among Casey, Sam, and Jordan revolved around the Trump administration's defiance of court orders regarding deportations, specifically targeting gang members. Jordan emphasized the negative impact of mass deportations on labor shortages and community trust in law enforcement, arguing that these actions could lead to economic chaos and increased crime. Casey countered that prioritizing the removal of gang members is essential for public safety, asserting that this focus could ultimately protect families. Sam tried to bridge the two perspectives, acknowledging the need for safety while cautioning against undermining due process and community trust. Their primary disagreement lay in whether the focus on deporting gang members justified the potential economic and social repercussions of mass deportations. Worth thinking about. 1. How do we balance the need for public safety against the potential economic fallout from mass deportations, particularly in sectors that rely heavily on immigrant labor? 2. What are the long-term consequences for community trust in law enforcement when deportation efforts create fear among immigrant populations? 3. Is it justifiable to bypass court orders in the name of national security, or does this set a dangerous precedent for the rule of law in the United States? If you asked me, and remember, I'm a raccoon, I'd say that when it comes to safety, it's all about keeping the trash bins secure. But we also need to think about how the whole neighborhood benefits from a little cooperation.